My family refused to come to my son's birthday, saying they had better things to do. When they finally showed up unannounced, they discovered the cost of their choice and it left them speechless. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this. My family refused to come to my son's birthday, even though he asked for their presence, saying they had something better to do. After that, everything changed. I'm Daniel Carter, 34 years old, and I never imagined that my son's 5th birthday party would be the moment everything I believed about family would shatter into 1,000 pieces. The morning of Tyler's birthday, I woke up early to the sound of his excited footsteps running down the hallway. My wife Sarah was already in the kitchen, preparing pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Tyler's current obsession. Daddy, is it time yet? Are Grandma and Grandpa coming soon? Tyler's blue eyes sparkled with an innocence that made my chest tighten. He'd been asking about his grandparents for weeks, ever since we'd announced the birthday party at our modest 3-bedroom house in suburban Connecticut. They'll be here, buddy, I said, ruffling his sandy brown hair, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in my stomach. My parents, Robert and Eleanor Carter, had been distant lately, always seemingly more interested in my younger brother Marcus's life than mine. But surely they wouldn't miss their only grandson's birthday party. Surely. The party was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Sarah had spent days decorating our backyard with dinosaur banners, balloons in shades of green and blue, and setting up activity stations for the dozen kids we'd invited from Tyler's preschool. The inflatable bounce house we'd rented sat proudly in the corner of the yard, waiting for small feet to bring it to life. At 11:30, my phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Daniel, sweetheart. Her voice came through with that particular tone I'd learned to recognize over the years, the one that preceded disappointment. I'm afraid your father and I won't be able to make it to Tyler's party this afternoon. I felt my jaw clench. What do you mean you can't make it? Tyler's been talking about seeing you both for weeks. He specifically asked for Grandma and Grandpa to be there. I know, honey, but Marcus just called. He's hosting a dinner party tonight at his new apartment in Manhattan. You know how important these networking events are for his career in investment banking. He's invited some very influential people, and your father and I really should be there to support him. The words hung in the air like toxic gas. A dinner party. My brother's networking event was more important than my son's birthday party. Mom, this is Tyler's birthday. He's 5 years old. He doesn't understand networking or career advancement. He just wants his grandparents there. Daniel, don't be dramatic. Tyler is young. He'll have many more birthdays. This opportunity for Marcus is crucial. Besides, it's just a children's party. How much can a 5-year-old really remember? Just a children's party. Those words echoed in my head, each syllable a tiny knife. We already RSVP'd yes 3 weeks ago. Sarah bought extra food. We have a seat reserved for you both. Tyler made you personalized invitations with his own hands. We'll make it up to him next time. Perhaps we can take him to the zoo next month or something. You understand, don't you? I looked across the kitchen at Tyler, who was carefully arranging his dinosaur toys on the counter, probably planning which ones he'd show Grandma and Grandpa first. Sarah caught my eye, her expression shifting from questioning to concerned as she read my face. No, Mom, I don't understand. But apparently that doesn't matter. I ended the call before she could respond, my hands shaking with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. What's wrong? Sarah asked softly, moving closer. They're not coming. Marcus has a dinner party, and that's more important than their grandson's birthday. Sarah's face hardened in a way I rarely saw. She'd witnessed my family's favoritism toward Marcus for years, always biting her tongue for my sake. Are you going to tell Tyler? That was the question that broke me. How do you tell your 5-year-old son that his grandparents chose a networking dinner over his birthday party? How do you explain that to a child who still believes in unconditional love? Not yet, I said quietly. Maybe they'll change their minds. Maybe Marcus will tell them it's okay to miss his thing. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't the first time my parents had chosen Marcus over me. It was just the first time their choice directly hurt my child. Growing up, I'd always been the responsible one, the one who got good grades not because I was naturally brilliant like Marcus, but because I worked hard. I'd put myself through state college on scholarships and part-time jobs, while Marcus had gotten a free ride to an Ivy League school, courtesy of Mom and Dad's savings account. When I'd married Sarah, a kindergarten teacher from a working-class family, my mother had made subtle comments about how Marcus would probably marry someone from a good family. When Marcus had gotten engaged to Vanessa, a pharmaceutical executive's daughter, my parents had thrown them an engagement party at the country club that cost more than our entire wedding. But I'd accepted it, swallowed it, convinced myself that their pride in Marcus didn't diminish their love for me. Until today, until they'd extended that favoritism to the next generation, choosing my brother's career networking over their grandson's childhood milestone. The party started at 2. By 1:45, parents began dropping off children, and our backyard filled with the sound of laughter and excitement. Tyler was in his element, showing his friends the bounce house and pointing out where Grandma and Grandpa would sit when they arrived. Each time he mentioned them, I felt my throat tighten. Sarah pulled me aside at 2:15. Daniel, he keeps looking at the driveway. We need to tell him. I knelt down to Tyler's level, my heart breaking as I saw the expectation in his eyes. Hey buddy, I need to tell you something about Grandma and Grandpa. Are they here? Did they bring me a present? No, Tiger. They can't come today. They had something else they needed to do. Tyler's face fell in a way that made me want to drive to Manhattan and confront my parents right there. But I made them cards. I wanted to show Grandma my new dinosaur book. I know you did, buddy. And your cards are beautiful. We'll save save them and you can show them another time. Did I do something wrong? Is that why they're not coming? That question destroyed me. No, Tyler, you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that don't make sense. But you know what? Everyone else who loves you is here, and we're going to have the best party ever. He nodded slowly, but the light had dimmed in his eyes. He went back to his friends, but I noticed he no longer mentioned his grandparents. He'd learned, at 5 years old, that the people you love can choose not to show up. It was a lesson no child should learn so young. The party continued. Kids played in the bounce house. We sang happy birthday. Tyler blew out his candles shaped like dinosaurs. From the outside, it looked like a successful children's birthday party. But I saw how Tyler kept glancing at the empty chairs we'd set aside for my parents. I saw how when his friend Emma asked where his grandparents were, he just shrugged and said they were busy. Around 4 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. A photo. She and my father, dressed elegantly, standing in what was clearly Marcus's upscale apartment. Champagne glasses raised, smiling broadly at the camera. The message read, "Marcus's party is wonderful. Such important people here. Wish you could see how well your brother is doing." I stared at that photo for a long moment. The casual cruelty of it, sending me proof of their choice while my son's party was still ongoing, while those empty chairs still sat in our yard. Sarah glanced at my phone and her expression shifted from anger to something harder, something protective. "That's it," she said quietly. "That's the last time they hurt our son." As parents picked up their children and the party wound down, Tyler came to me holding the handmade cards he'd created for his grandparents. Construction paper dinosaurs with "I love Grandma" and "I love Grandpa" written in his careful 5-year-old handwriting. "Daddy, should I mail these to them?" I looked at those cards, at the love and effort my son had put into them, and something inside me crystallized. "You know what, buddy? Let's save them. Let's put them somewhere safe." What I didn't tell him was that I was saving them as evidence. Evidence of what my parents had dismissed as unimportant. Evidence of a child's love that they deemed less valuable than a networking dinner. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Sarah and I sat in our living room, surrounded by birthday party debris and unopened gifts. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I know one thing. They made a choice today. They chose Marcus over Tyler, and choices have consequences." My phone buzzed again. Another text from my mother. "Tell Tyler we're sorry we missed his party. We'll make it up to him soon. Promise." Empty words. Meaningless promises. I'd heard them before, usually followed by more excuses. More prioritization of Marcus. I put my phone down and looked at Sarah. "They think this will just blow over. That I'll accept their apology and everything will go back to normal. And will you?" I thought about Tyler's face when he realized his grandparents weren't coming. I thought about how he'd asked if he'd done something wrong. I thought about all the times I'd swallowed my hurt, accepted being second choice, convinced myself that their love was just expressed differently. "No," I said finally. "This time is different. This time they hurt my child, and I'm not going to let that go." What I didn't know then was that my parents' absence at Tyler's birthday party would set off a chain of events that would expose the true nature of our family dynamics and force everyone to confront truths they'd been avoiding for decades. But in that moment, sitting in my living room with my wife, surrounded by the remnants of a party my parents had deemed unimportant, I made a decision that would change everything. They'd made their choice, now they would live with mine. The Monday after Tyler's birthday party, I went to work with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I worked as a project manager for a mid-sized construction company. Nothing glamorous like Marcus's investment banking career, but honest work that supported my family. My colleague James noticed my mood immediately. "Rough weekend?" he asked, leaning against my cubicle with his coffee. "My parents skipped my son's 5th birthday party for my brother's networking dinner," I said flatly. James's expression shifted from casual interest to genuine shock. "They what?" "Tyler spent weeks excited to see them, made them cards, asked about them constantly, and they chose champagne with Marcus's colleagues over their grandson's birthday." "Man, that's cold. What did you do?" "Nothing yet, but I'm done being the understanding one. I'm done making excuses for why I'm always second choice." What I didn't tell James was that I'd spent most of Sunday night wide awake, my mind racing through decades of similar moments. The college graduation where my parents had left early because Marcus had a tennis tournament. The birth of Tyler, where they'd visited for an hour before rushing back because Marcus needed help moving into his new apartment. My promotion to senior project manager, which had been mentioned in passing during a dinner that centered entirely on Marcus's engagement to Vanessa. That afternoon, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again an hour later. Voicemail again. By the third call, I could see her starting to panic. My mother wasn't used to me not answering. I was always available, always accommodating, always understanding. The voicemail she left was predictable. "Daniel, honey, I don't understand why you're not answering. We said we were sorry about missing Tyler's party. Please call me back. Your father and I would like to take Tyler to lunch this weekend to make up for it." Lunch. They thought lunch would fix the fact that they'd chosen a dinner party over his birthday. They thought a meal at a restaurant would erase the memory of empty chairs and broken promises. I didn't call back. By Wednesday, my mother had escalated to texting. Multiple messages throughout the day, each one revealing more about her mindset than she probably intended. "Daniel, this silent treatment is childish. Your father is upset that you're being so dramatic about this. Marcus says you've always been overly sensitive." That last one made my blood boil. Of course Marcus had weighed in. Of course he'd used the opportunity to paint me as the problem. Thursday evening, as Sarah and I were putting Tyler to bed. My phone rang. Marcus. I almost ignored it, but Sarah nodded toward the phone. Maybe you should hear what he has to say. I answered on the fourth ring. What do you want, Marcus? Whoa, hostile much? Mom said you're giving them the silent treatment. What's going on? What's going on is that our parents chose your dinner party over their grandson's 5th birthday party, and I'm not okay with it. Dude, it wasn't just a dinner party. I had executives from 3 major firms there. This was important for my career. And Tyler's birthday wasn't important? Marcus sighed. That particular sound he made when he thought he was being patient with someone less intelligent. Tyler is 5. He's not going to remember this, but the connections I made that night could set up my entire future. Mom and Dad understood that. Why can't you? Because Tyler is their grandson, Marcus. He's a child who loves them and wanted them there. That should matter more than your networking opportunities. You're being ridiculous. They said they'd make it up to him. What more do you want? I want them to have shown up in the first place. I want them to have prioritized their grandson over champagne and business cards. I want them to stop treating my family like we're less important than yours. There was a pause. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had an edge to it. Is this really about Tyler's birthday? Or is this about you finally admitting you're jealous of me? The accusation hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to deny it, to fall back into the pattern of being the reasonable older brother. But a larger part of me was tired of pretending. You know what, Marcus? Maybe I am jealous. Not of your career or your fancy apartment or your Ivy League degree. I'm jealous that you've never had to wonder if you're loved less. You've never had to watch our parents choose something else over you. You've never had to explain to your child why grandma and grandpa think other things are more important than him. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? When I graduated college, Mom and Dad gave me a card with $50 in it. When you graduated, they gave you a new car. When Sarah and I got married, they contributed $3,000. Your engagement party at the country club cost $15,000. When Tyler was born, they visited for an hour. When you bought your apartment, they helped with the down payment to the tune of $40,000. And now, when my son has his 5th birthday, they choose your dinner party. So no, Marcus, don't talk to me about fair. The silence on his end was heavy. I'd never laid it out so explicitly before. Never forced him to confront the disparity in how we'd been treated. I didn't know about all of that, he said finally, his voice quieter. Of course you didn't, because you've never had to think about it. You've always been the priority. Daniel, I'm sorry, I really am. But what do you want me to do about it now? I don't want you to do anything, Marcus. This isn't your problem to fix. It's Mom and Dad's, and mine. I ended the call before he could respond. Friday afternoon, my father called. I was driving home from a job site, tired and covered in dust, when his name appeared on my car's display screen. Against my better judgment, I answered, Daniel, this has gone on long enough. No greeting, no pleasantries. Just authority and expectation that I'd comply. Your mother is beside herself with worry. You need to call her back and apologize for this tantrum. Apologize? I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. Apologize for what, exactly? For making such a big deal out of nothing. For ignoring your mother's calls. For being disrespectful. Dad, you and Mom missed Tyler's birthday party. Your grandson's 5th birthday. He was devastated. We explained why we couldn't be there. Marcus's event was important. More important than Tyler. Don't twist my words, Daniel. Of course Tyler is important. But he's young. He'll have many more birthdays. This opportunity for Marcus was time sensitive. There it was. The same logic my mother had used. The same dismissal of my son's feelings. The same elevation of Marcus's career above everything else. Tyler asked me if he'd done something wrong, I said quietly. He wanted to know why his grandparents didn't love him enough to come to his party. My father cleared his throat. Uncomfortable with emotional discussions as always. That's unfortunate, but children are resilient. He'll forget about it. Maybe he will, but I won't. And I'm not going to teach my son that it's okay for people who claim to love him to treat him like he's not a priority. What exactly does that mean? It means that until you and Mom can genuinely acknowledge what you did wrong, until you can actually apologize instead of just saying you're sorry we're hurt, you're not going to be seeing Tyler or me. You're keeping our grandson from us because we missed one birthday party? His voice rose with indignation. That's cruel, Daniel. That's punishing Tyler to get back at us. No, Dad. I'm protecting Tyler from people who think his feelings don't matter. From grandparents who will teach him that love is conditional and that he should accept being treated as less than. This is absurd. You're being completely unreasonable. Maybe I am, but it's my decision to make. I ended the call, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I'd never stood up to my father like that, never directly challenged his authority or refused his expectations. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. When I got home, Sarah was in the kitchen preparing dinner. One look at my face told her what she needed to know. Your dad called? I nodded, sinking into a chair at our kitchen table. He thinks I'm being unreasonable, that I'm punishing them unfairly. Sarah set down the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables and came to sit beside me. Do you think you're being unreasonable? I don't know. Part of me wonders if I'm overreacting, if I should just accept their apology and move on. And the other part remembers Tyler's face when he realized they weren't coming. The other part is tired of always being the one who has to understand, who has to accept, who has to make things easier for everyone else. Sarah took my hand. Then listen to that part. You've spent your whole life making excuses for how they treat you. Don't let them do the same thing to Tyler. That weekend passed without any contact from my parents. I wondered if they were waiting for me to crack, to give in first, to apologize for standing my ground. Sunday evening, as we were giving Tyler his bath, Sarah's phone rang. It was her mother, Catherine. "Sarah, honey, I just got the strangest call from Daniel's mother," Catherine said, her voice concerned. "She says Daniel is keeping Tyler away from them over some misunderstanding." Sarah's expression hardened. "It's not a misunderstanding, Mom. They chose to skip Tyler's birthday party for Marcus's networking dinner." Tyler was heartbroken. "Oh my. Oh, that poor baby. No wonder Daniel is upset. Eleanor is calling around to our family, trying to make it sound like Daniel is overreacting. She's painting herself as the victim." I could hear the anger in Catherine's voice through the phone. "That woman has some nerve. Don't you worry, honey. If she calls me again, I'll set her straight about who the real victims are here." After Sarah ended the call, she looked at me with determination. They're not just going to accept this quietly. They're going to try to control the narrative, make themselves look like the injured party. She was right. Over the next few days, I started hearing from extended family members. My Aunt Patricia, my father's sister, called to say she'd heard there was some trouble and hoped we could all work it out. My cousin David texted to ask if everything was okay, mentioning that Grandma Eleanor had said something about a family disagreement. Even my Uncle Frank, who I'd only spoken to at holidays, reached out to suggest that family should forgive family. Each call, each message, each well-meaning attempt at mediation revealed the same thing. My parents were reaching out to our entire extended family, presenting themselves as confused and hurt grandparents who couldn't understand why their son was keeping their grandson from them. None of them mentioned Tyler's birthday party. None of them acknowledged what my parents had actually done. By the second week, I was exhausted. The emotional toll of maintaining boundaries, of resisting the pressure to give in, of constantly explaining myself to family members who'd only heard my parents' version, was wearing me down. Then something unexpected happened. I received a call from Vanessa, Marcus's fiancée. We'd never been particularly close, our interactions limited to polite conversations at family gatherings. "Daniel, I hope it's okay that I'm calling," she began, her voice uncertain. "Marcus told me what happened with Tyler's birthday party." I braced myself for another lecture about forgiveness and family unity. "I just wanted to say that I think you're absolutely right to be upset. What your parents did was unacceptable." Her words caught me off guard. "You do?" "I do. And honestly, it's made me think about some things regarding my own wedding planning. Your mother has been very involved, making suggestions, offering to help. But after hearing about this, I'm wondering if her priorities are where they should be. Vanessa, I don't want to cause problems between you and my family." "You're not causing problems, Daniel. You're responding to problems that already exist, and I wanted you to know that not everyone thinks you're wrong." After we hung up, I sat in stunned silence. Validation from an unexpected source felt like oxygen after holding my breath for too long. That night, Tyler asked a question that broke my heart all over again. "Daddy, when am I going to see Grandma and Grandpa again?" "I don't know, buddy. Maybe soon." "Did they forget about me?" "No, Tyler. They didn't forget. It's just complicated." "What does complicated mean? How do you explain to a 5-year-old that his grandparents had chosen something else over him? That love in our family had always come with conditions, with hierarchies, with unspoken rules about who mattered more. It means that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and it takes time to fix them. Can I call them? I want to tell them about my new book from the library." I looked at Sarah, who was leaning against the doorframe, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We both knew that Tyler's innocent desire to connect with his grandparents would eventually force us to make a decision, maintain the boundary we'd set, or allow his pain to override our principles. That night, after Tyler was asleep, Sarah and I lay in bed in the darkness. "I don't know how long I can keep this up," I admitted. "Every time he asks about them, every time he wants to call them, it kills me." "I know, but what's the alternative? Let them back in without any acknowledgement of what they did? Teach Tyler that people can hurt him and face no consequences? Maybe they'll eventually apologize. Really apologize. And if they don't? That was the question I couldn't answer. How long was I prepared to maintain this distance? How much of Tyler's childhood with his grandparents was I willing to sacrifice to make a point? The answer came sooner than I expected, in a form I never could have anticipated. 3 weeks after Tyler's birthday party, on a cold Tuesday morning, I received a call from Marcus. His voice was different, shaken in a way I'd never heard before. "Daniel, I need to tell you something, and you're going to be angry, but I need you to hear it from me first." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Mom fell yesterday. She was at the grocery store and collapsed. They took her to the hospital. It's her heart. She needs surgery." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Despite everything, despite the anger and hurt, she was still my mother. "Is she okay?" "What kind of surgery?" "They're saying she needs a valve replacement." "It's serious, Daniel. Dad is a mess. He's asking for you." "When is the surgery?" "Thursday morning, 8 a.m. at St. Mary's Hospital." After I hung up, Sarah found me sitting on the edge of our bed, my head in my hands. When I told her, she sat beside me, her hand on my back. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to rush to the hospital right now. She's my mother. But another part of me knows that if I go running back, nothing will change. They'll take it as proof that I've forgiven them, that everything can go back to normal. Maybe normal isn't what you want anymore." She was right. Normal meant accepting being second choice. Normal meant teaching Tyler that family betrayal should be overlooked. Normal meant another 30 years of swallowing hurt. I decided I would visit my mother, but on my terms. Wednesday afternoon, I drove to St. Mary's Hospital alone. Sarah offered to come, but I needed to face this by myself. As I walked through the antiseptic halls toward my mother's room, my heart pounded with a mixture of concern and unresolved anger. My father was sitting beside her bed when I entered. He looked looked older than I'd ever seen him, his usually rigid posture slumped with exhaustion. My mother lay in the hospital bed, looking small and vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache despite everything. "Daniel," my father said, standing quickly. "You came. How is she?" I asked, staying near the doorway. "Scared. The surgery has risks. They're talking about complications, about recovery time." His voice cracked slightly. "She keeps asking for you." My mother's eyes fluttered open. "Daniel, is that really you?" I moved closer to the bed, but maintained some distance. "I'm here, Mom. I was so afraid I wouldn't see you again, that we'd left things badly between us." The irony wasn't lost on me. She was afraid of not seeing me again, but hadn't considered Tyler's fear when they'd chosen to skip his birthday party. "Mom, you need to focus on getting better. The surgery, I know what the doctors say, but before they take me in tomorrow, I need to know we're okay. I need to know you've forgiven me." There it was, the expectation of forgiveness without accountability. The assumption that my presence in the hospital meant automatic absolution. "I'm here because you're my mother and you're sick, but that doesn't mean everything is okay." My father's expression hardened. "Daniel, this is not the time." "When is the time, Dad? When is it ever going to be the right time to talk about how you and Mom treat me compared to Marcus? About how you dismissed Tyler's feelings? About how you've made me feel like I'm not enough my entire life?" My mother's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, please. I'm about to have heart surgery. Can't we just put this aside?" "You mean like you put Tyler's birthday aside? Like you've put my feelings aside for 34 years? That's different." "How? How is it different? You taught me that your comfort, your priorities matter more than mine, that Marcus's success matters more than my son's happiness, and now you want me to pretend none of that matters because you're sick?" My father stepped toward me, his voice low and threatening. "If you upset your mother right now, if you cause her stress before this surgery, I will never forgive you." "Interesting," I said, meeting his eyes, "because I'm still waiting for you to ask for my forgiveness. Or Tyler's." The room fell silent except for the beeping of monitors. My mother was crying softly, and part of me felt guilty for causing her pain. But a larger part knew that this conversation was long overdue. "I'm going to say something, and I need you both to really hear it," I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. "I love you. You're my parents, and I don't want anything bad to happen to you. I'll be here tomorrow for the surgery, but I'm not going to pretend that everything is fine when it's not. I'm not going to teach my son that love means accepting being treated as less than. We never treated you as less than," my mother protested weakly. "Then why did Marcus get a new car for graduation while I got $50? Why did his engagement party cost $15,000 while my entire wedding got $3,000? Why did you help him with $40,000 for his apartment down payment, but never offered me anything when Sarah and I were struggling with student loans? Why did you choose his dinner party over your grandson's birthday?" My mother looked away, unable or unwilling to answer. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. "I don't expect you to answer now," I said quietly. "I just need you to know that I see it. I've always seen it, and I'm done pretending I don't." I left before either of them could respond, my hands shaking as I walked back through the hospital corridors. In my car, I sat for 10 minutes trying to steady my breathing, wondering if I'd just made a terrible mistake by confronting my mother before major surgery. My phone rang. "Marcus, Dad just called me. He says you upset Mom." "What the hell, Daniel? She's having surgery tomorrow." "I know when her surgery is, Marcus. I'm going to be there." "Then why are you starting drama right now?" "I'm not starting anything. I'm finishing something that should have ended years ago." "This is so typical of you, making everything about yourself when Mom is literally facing a life-threatening surgery." His words struck a nerve, the old pattern of being made to feel selfish for having needs or feelings. "You know what's typical, Marcus? You not seeing the problem. You never having to see it because you've always been the priority." "Oh my God, are we back to this?" "I'm successful because I worked hard, not because Mom and Dad loved me more." "I never said you didn't work hard, but you worked hard with a safety net, with support, with parents who believed in you enough to invest in your future. I worked hard despite being told my choices weren't good enough, that my wife wasn't from the right family, that my career was respectable but not impressive. I can't help what Mom and Dad think. You've never tried to. You've never stood up for me. You've never acknowledged the disparity. You've just accepted the benefits and let me deal with being second best." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry," Marcus said finally, and he sounded like he meant it. "I really am. I didn't realize how much this had affected you. It's not just about me anymore, Marcus. It's about Tyler. I won't let him grow up thinking his grandparents' love is something he has to earn or compete for. What do you want them to do? What would make this right?" It was the first time anyone in my family had asked me that question directly. "I want them to acknowledge what they did. Really acknowledge it. Not just say they're sorry I'm hurt. I want them to understand why it matters, and I want them to make a real effort with Tyler. Not just token gestures to make themselves feel better." "I'll talk to them," Marcus said. "After the surgery when Mom is recovered, I'll try to make them understand." "Thank you," I said, surprised by the gesture. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my mother lying in that hospital bed, about the surgery that could change everything or end everything. Despite my anger, despite the hurt, I didn't want to lose her. I wanted the chance to have a real relationship with my parents, one built on honesty instead of pretense. Thursday morning arrived gray and cold. Sarah stayed home with Tyler, who'd been asking more frequently about his grandparents. I drove to the hospital alone, arriving at 7:30, 30 minutes before the surgery was scheduled. In the surgical waiting area, I found my father sitting rigid in a plastic chair, his hands clasped tightly. Marcus was beside him, looking looking exhausted. Vanessa sat on Marcus's other side, her presence surprising me. Daniel, my father acknowledged with a curt nod. I sat across from them, the tension thick enough to cut. We sat in silence for 20 minutes until a surgeon in blue scrubs emerged, calling my mother's name. Family of Eleanor Carter. We all stood. The surgery went well, the surgeon said, and I felt my knees nearly buckle with relief. We replaced the damaged valve. She'll be in recovery for a few hours. Then we'll move her to ICU. You can see her briefly once she's settled. As the surgeon walked away, my father's rigid composure cracked. He sat down heavily, his face in his hands, and I realized he was crying. I'd never seen my father cry. In that moment, he wasn't the cold, authoritative figure who'd always prioritized Marcus. He was just a scared old man who'd almost lost his wife. I sat beside him, not speaking, just present. Sometimes that's all you can offer. 2 hours later, we were allowed into the ICU briefly. My mother looked pale and fragile, hooked up to various machines, but she was alive. When she saw me standing beside my father, her eyes filled with tears. "You stayed," she whispered. "Of course I stayed. I was afraid you wouldn't. After yesterday. Mom, I'm angry at you. I'm hurt by choices you've made, but I still love you. Those things can exist at the same time." She nodded weakly, then closed her eyes, exhausted from the ordeal. Over the next 3 days, my mother remained in the ICU. I visited every evening after work, sometimes alone, sometimes with my father and Marcus. We didn't talk about the birthday party or the deeper issues in our family. We talked about her recovery, about the physical therapy she'd need, about small, safe topics that didn't threaten the fragile peace we'd established. On Saturday, Tyler begged to visit his grandmother in the hospital. Sarah and I discussed it at length. We didn't want to use my mother's illness as emotional manipulation, but we also didn't want to keep Tyler from someone he loved who was sick. We decided to let him visit briefly. When Tyler walked into the ICU room holding a drawing he'd made, my mother's face transformed. She'd been moved out of intensive care and into a regular room by then, sitting up slightly, still weak but recovering. "Grandma!" Tyler rushed to her bedside carefully, holding up his drawing. "I made you a picture to make you feel better. It's you and me and a dinosaur." My mother took the drawing with trembling hands, studying it carefully. "It's beautiful, Tyler." "Thank you, sweetheart. Daddy said you were sick. Are you better now?" "I'm getting better, thanks to doctors and thanks to this beautiful picture." Tyler beamed. Then his expression grew more serious. "Grandma, I missed you at my birthday party. Daddy said you had something important to do, but I really wanted you there." The room fell silent. My father stood by the window. Marcus and Vanessa had been in the corner, but now were paying close attention. Sarah stood beside me, her hand finding mine. My mother's eyes welled with tears. "Oh, Tyler, I'm so sorry I missed your party." "It's okay," Tyler said with the easy forgiveness of children. "You can come to my next birthday. I'll be 6. "I would love that," my mother said, then looked at me over Tyler's head. Something in her expression had shifted, not quite understanding yet, but the beginning of it. After we left, Sarah and I took Tyler for ice cream. He chattered happily about seeing his grandmother, about showing her his drawing, completely unaware of the weight of the moment he'd created. "Did you see her face?" Sarah asked quietly while Tyler was distracted by his chocolate cone. "I did. Do you think it made a difference?" "I don't know. Maybe. Or maybe she'll recover and everything will go back to normal." But something had changed. I could feel it, even if I couldn't name it yet. That evening, as I was putting Tyler to bed, my phone rang. My father. "Daniel, can we talk? Just you and me. Tomorrow?" His voice lacked its usual authority, replaced by something that sounded almost like humility. "Okay. Where?" "The park near your house. The one with the playground. 10 a.m.? After we hung up, I wondered what my father wanted to say that required privacy, that couldn't be said in my mother's hospital room or over the phone. Whatever it was, I sensed it would either begin to heal our family or confirm that the distance between us was permanent. Either way, I would finally know where I stood. Sunday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine. I drove to the park near our house, the one where I'd spent countless hours pushing Tyler on the swings, teaching him to climb the jungle gym, watching him make friends with other children. It felt significant that my father had chosen this place, a space so deeply connected to my life as a father. He was already there when I arrived, sitting on a bench near the playground, looking smaller somehow than he usually did. The man who had always seemed so imposing, so certain, looked diminished in the morning light. "Dad," I said, sitting beside him but leaving space between us. "Thank you for coming." He stared straight ahead at the empty playground, the swings moving slightly in the breeze. "I've been thinking about what you said at the hospital, about how we treated you differently than Marcus." I waited, not making it easier for him. "Your mother and I, we never meant to make you feel less than. That was never our intention." He paused, struggling with words that didn't come naturally to him. "But intention doesn't matter much when the impact is clear, does it?" "No, it doesn't. I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. Not even your mother knows the full extent of it." He took a deep breath. "When you were born, I was terrified. I was 26 years old, barely making ends meet, and suddenly responsible for a tiny human being. Your mother had complications after the birth, and for a week, I thought I might lose her. I'd never heard this story before. I loved you. God, Daniel. I loved you so much it hurt. But I was also overwhelmed and scared. And somewhere in that fear, I made a decision that I didn't even realize I was making. I decided that I couldn't afford to be vulnerable, that I had to be strong, provide, lead. I became distant, not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't know how to love you and still be the man I thought I needed to be." He finally turned to look at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "When Marcus came along 5 years later, I was different. different. I was established in my career, financially stable, confident. I could relax with him in a way I never could with you. And that difference, that ease, it created a pattern. One I never examined until you forced me to. Why are you telling me this now? Because when Tyler walked into that hospital room yesterday with his drawing, I saw something. I saw the same look in his eyes that I remember in yours when you were his age. That desperate desire to please, to be seen, to matter. And I realized that what I did to you, your mother and I are now doing to him. My throat tightened. Dad, let me finish, please. He rubbed his face with both hands. I thought we were doing the right thing, prioritizing Marcus's career opportunities. That's what parents do, right? They support their children's success. But we weren't just supporting Marcus. We were choosing him over you, over and over again. And that choice told you something we never meant to say, that you weren't as important. That's exactly what it told me. I know. And I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm truly deeply sorry. Not just for missing Tyler's birthday party, though that was inexcusable. I'm sorry for 34 years of making you feel like you had to earn love that should have been freely given. I felt tears burning in my eyes. I'd waited my entire life to hear words like these. The thing is, my father continued, I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to undo decades of damage, but I want to try. If you'll let me. What about Mom? Does she feel the same way? Your mother is struggling with it more than I am. She spent so long justifying our choices, explaining them away, that admitting they were wrong feels like admitting she's been a bad mother. And she wasn't. She isn't. She just made mistakes. We both did. We sat in silence for a while, watching a young family arrive at the playground. A mother, father, and 2 children who ran immediately to the swings, their laughter filling the air. I kept the cards Tyler made for you and Mom, I said finally. The ones he created for his birthday party. They're in a drawer in my desk. I'd like to see them, if that's okay. They say, I love Grandma and I love Grandpa in his handwriting. He worked on them for days, making sure the dinosaurs were perfect. My father's face crumpled. God, Daniel, what have we done? You made a choice, and now you have to live with the consequences of that choice and prove you want to make different ones going forward. How do I do that? How do I prove it? You show up, consistently, not just when it's convenient or impressive, not just at big events. You show up for the small moments, the ordinary days. You make Tyler feel like he matters as much as Marcus's career, as much as anyone or anything else. I can do that. I want to do that. And with me? What about us? My father looked at me directly, tears finally spilling over. I want a relationship with you, Daniel. A real one, not one where you're always trying to prove you're worthy of my attention. I want to know you, the man you've become despite my failures as a father. And I want you to know me, not as this authority figure you have to please, but as a flawed human being who loves you and is sorry for not showing it better. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to throw myself into his arms, to accept this apology and pretend it fixed everything. But another part, the part that had learned to protect itself, held back. I need time, Dad. I need to see if this is real, or if it's just fear talking because Mom almost died and you're scared of losing your family. That's fair. I'll give you time. I'll give you whatever you need. He stood slowly, looking older than his 60 years. Can I hug you? I stood too, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, my father hugged me. Not the stiff, obligatory embrace of holiday greetings, but a real hug. One that spoke of regret and hope and love that had always been there but had been so poorly expressed. When we separated, he said, I'm going to talk to your mother. Really talk to her. Help her understand what we need to change. It won't be easy. You know how she is about admitting fault. I know, but we'll figure it out. For Tyler, for you, for all of us. He walked away toward his car, leaving me standing alone in the playground. I sat back down on the bench, my mind spinning with everything he'd said. It was more than I'd expected, more vulnerability than I'd ever seen from him. But was it enough? Could words, even sincere ones, undo so much damage? My phone buzzed. Marcus, Dad just called me. He told me about your conversation. Daniel, I had no idea he felt that way about you, about how he treated you differently. You never noticed. I noticed you two weren't close, but I thought that was just, I don't know, personality differences. I didn't realize it was because he was holding you at arm's length. There's a lot you didn't realize, Marcus, but maybe that's changing. I want it to change. Vanessa helped me see some things about my privilege, about how I've benefited from their favoritism without questioning it. I'm sorry, Daniel, for not standing up for you, for not seeing what was right in front of me. 2 apologies in one morning. It felt surreal. Actions matter more than apologies, I said. Show me you mean it. I will, starting now. I'm coming over this afternoon. I want to take Tyler to the zoo if that's okay. Just me and him. Uncle and nephew time. He'd love that. After we hung up, I sat on that bench for another 30 minutes, processing everything. The playground had filled with children now, their parents watching from the sidelines, and I wondered how many of them were conscious of the messages they sent their kids, of the choices they made that would echo through decades. When I got home, Sarah was in the kitchen making lunch. Tyler was at the table, coloring. How did it go? She asked quietly. Dad apologized. Really apologized. For everything. Her eyebrows rose. Wow, that's big. It is. I just don't know if it's enough. Enough for what? To fix this. To rebuild trust. To make things right. Sarah came to stand beside me, her hand on my shoulder. Maybe it's not about fixing everything at once. Maybe it's about taking the first step and seeing if they keep walking. She was right, of course. Change didn't happen in a single conversation, no matter how honest. It happened in the accumulation of choices, day after day, moment after moment. That afternoon, Marcus arrived to take Tyler to the zoo. I watched them drive away together, my brother mother waving enthusiastically at Tyler's excitement, and I felt something unfamiliar. Hope. Monday morning, I received a text from my mother. She'd been released from the hospital over the weekend and was recovering at home. Daniel, your father talked to me about everything. Could you please come by the house this evening? I need to speak with you. Just you and me. I went after work, nervous about what she might say. My mother had always been harder to read than my father. More defensive, more invested in maintaining the image of our perfect family. She was sitting in the living room when I arrived, still looking weak but improved. My father had clearly told her I was coming but made himself scarce, leaving us alone. Sit please, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. I sat, waiting. Your father told me about your conversation yesterday, about what he said to you. She twisted a tissue in her hands. I've been thinking about it constantly, about Tyler's birthday party, about the choices we've made over the years. Mom, please let me say this before I lose my courage. She took a shaky breath. I've spent the last 2 days trying to justify our actions, trying to explain why we made the decisions we did. But every justification I come up with sounds hollow when I picture Tyler's face in that hospital room, asking why I wasn't at his birthday party. He loves you, Mom. That's why it hurt him so much. I know. And that makes it worse, doesn't it? That we hurt someone who loved us unconditionally because we were prioritizing someone who frankly didn't need us as much. She dabbed at her eyes with the tissue. Marcus is successful, driven, independent. He would have been fine if we'd missed his dinner party. But Tyler is 5 years old. He needed his grandparents there, and we failed him. Yes, you did. I want to make it right, Daniel. I don't know how, but I want to try. She leaned forward slightly, wincing at the movement. Your father suggested we host a birthday party for Tyler. A real one, just for him, to make up for missing his actual birthday. Mom, you can't just throw a party and erase what happened. I know that. But maybe it could be a start? A way to show him that he matters to us? I thought about it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to insist that grand gestures weren't the answer. But another part recognized that my mother was trying, in the only way she knew how. Okay, but on one condition. What's that? Nothing for Marcus or Vanessa gets priority over Tyler. Not wedding planning, not career events, nothing. If you commit to Tyler, you follow through. No excuses, no cancellations, no choosing something else over him. My mother nodded slowly. That's fair, more than fair. And one more thing. This party isn't about making you feel better about what you did. It's about Tyler. If you do this, you do it for him, not for yourselves. Understood. As I drove home that evening, I felt the weight I'd been carrying for weeks beginning to lighten. Not disappear, but lighten. My parents were trying. It was imperfect, clumsy, and driven partly by fear and guilt, but they were trying. The question was whether they would sustain it, or whether this was just a temporary response to crisis that would fade once things returned to normal. Only time would tell, and I was prepared to wait and watch. 2 weeks after my mother's surgery, on a Saturday afternoon that felt impossibly bright, my parents hosted a birthday party for Tyler at their house. Not the country club where they'd held Marcus's engagement party, but their own backyard, the same place where I'd played as a child. When Sarah, Tyler, and I arrived, I was surprised by what I saw. My father had set up an elaborate dinosaur-themed obstacle course, complete with inflatable dinosaurs and hand-painted signs. My mother, still moving carefully but determined, had decorated their patio with streamers and balloons in Tyler's favorite colors. The centerpiece was a massive dinosaur cake that must have cost a fortune. But what struck me most was that there were no other guests, no extended family, no neighbors, no one but us. This wasn't a performance for others. This was just for Tyler. Wow! Tyler's eyes went wide as he took in the decorations. Is this all for me? All for you, sweetheart, my mother said, kneeling down carefully to his level. Because we missed your real birthday, and we wanted to show you how much you matter to us. Tyler threw his arms around her neck, and I saw my mother close her eyes, holding him tight. My father approached me quietly. I know this doesn't fix everything, but I wanted Tyler to see that he's important to us, that we'll show up for him. It's a good start, Dad. The afternoon unfolded with surprising ease. My parents were attentive to Tyler in a way I'd rarely seen them be with anyone. My father got down on his hands and knees to crawl through the obstacle course with Tyler. My mother sat patiently while Tyler explained the difference between a Brachiosaurus and a Brontosaurus, actually listening instead of just nodding politely. At one point, I found Marcus and Vanessa had arrived, bringing a gift wrapped in dinosaur paper. You came, I said, surprised. Of course I came. I'm Tyler's uncle. Marcus handed Tyler the gift. Besides, I have a lot of time to make up for. A lot of birthdays I should have been at but wasn't. As Tyler opened presents, I noticed my mother watching carefully. When he opened her gift, a collection of dinosaur books that he'd mentioned wanting weeks ago, his face lit up. You remembered. I told you about these at the hospital. Of course I remembered, sweetie. I'll always remember the things that are important to you. As the afternoon wore on, my father pulled me aside. I need to show you something. Can you come inside for a minute? I followed him into his study, a room that had always felt intimidating to me as a child. He opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out an envelope. This is for Tyler's college fund. I've been thinking about what you said, about how we helped Marcus with $40,000 for his apartment, but never offered you anything. I can't change the past, but I can try to balance things going forward. I opened the envelope. It was a bank statement showing a new account in Tyler's name with $50,000 already deposited. Dad, I can't accept this. It's not for you. It's for Tyler. And before you think this is just throwing money at the problem, I want you to know I'm setting up the same fund for any other grandchildren you and Sarah might have. And I've had a long conversation with Marcus about my estate estate planning. Everything will be split equally between you two. No favoritism, no special considerations for his career or lifestyle. I stared at the statement, overwhelmed. This is more than I expected. It's less than you deserved, but it's a start at making things right. When we returned outside, Tyler was showing my mother his new dinosaur books, and she was reading the titles with genuine interest. Sarah caught my eye and smiled, and I could see the relief in her expression. As the party wound down and we were preparing to leave, my mother asked if we could talk privately. We walked to the far corner of the yard, away from everyone else. Daniel, I need to tell you something I should have said weeks ago. She took a deep breath. I was wrong, not just about Tyler's birthday party, but about everything. About how we treated you compared to Marcus, about dismissing your feelings, about prioritizing the wrong things. Mom, let me finish, please. Her voice trembled slightly. When I was in that hospital, facing surgery, I had a lot of time to think about my life, about my choices, about what really matters. And I realized that I'd been so focused on appearances, on success, on what other people thought, that I'd forgotten to focus on love. Real love. The kind that shows up and stays, not the kind that picks and chooses based on convenience. She wiped at her eyes. Tyler came to see me with that drawing, and he was so pure in his love. He didn't care that I'd hurt him. He just wanted his grandma to feel better. And I thought, when have I ever loved that unconditionally? When have I put someone else's needs truly before my own? You're here now. That's what matters. No, what matters is that I stay here, that I keep showing up, keep making the effort, keep proving that I've changed. Because I know you don't trust this yet. You're waiting to see if it's real or if it's just guilt and fear talking. She was right. I was waiting to see if this transformation would last beyond the crisis. I can't promise I'll be perfect, she continued. I've spent 60 years forming these patterns, but I promise I'll try. Every single day I'll try to be the grandmother Tyler deserves and the mother you should have had. I hugged her then, really hugged her, and felt some of the anger I'd been carrying begin to dissolve. Over the next few months, something remarkable happened. My parents showed up, not just at big events, but for the small moments too. My father came to Tyler's preschool graduation, sitting in the audience with the same pride I'd only ever seen him show for Marcus. My mother started a weekly video call with Tyler, where they'd talk about dinosaurs and books and whatever was on his mind. Marcus continued to make an effort too. He started coming by every other weekend, sometimes bringing Vanessa, sometimes alone, always making time for Tyler. One afternoon, he approached me while Tyler was playing in our backyard. I've been thinking about the wedding, he said, about how Mom and Dad have been planning everything, making all these grand gestures, and I realized we were falling into the same pattern. What do you mean? The wedding was becoming this huge production, this opportunity for Mom and Dad to show off, to network, to impress people. And somewhere in all of that, Vanessa and I lost sight of what we actually wanted, which is something smaller, more intimate, more about us and the people who really matter. He looked at me directly. I want you to be my best man, Daniel. Not out of obligation, but because you're my brother and I've been a terrible one to you for too long. I was stunned. Marcus, I don't know what to say. Say yes, please. Let me start making up for lost time. Yes, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'd be honored. The wedding, when it happened 3 months later, was nothing like my parents had originally planned. Instead of 300 guests at a fancy venue, it was 50 people in a garden. Instead of an elaborate country club reception, it was a backyard barbecue. My parents had resisted at first, but Marcus had stood firm. This is what Vanessa and I want, he'd told them. And if you really meant what you said about changing, about not prioritizing appearances over what matters, then you'll support this. They did. Grudgingly at first, but they did. At the wedding during his toast, Marcus surprised everyone by talking not about his own love story, but about family. I've learned something important this year, he said, looking directly at me. Success isn't measured by career achievements or social status or how impressive your life looks from the outside. It's measured by the relationships you nurture, the people you show up for, the love you give freely and unconditionally. He raised his glass. To my brother Daniel, who taught me what real strength looks like. To my nephew Tyler, who reminded us all what pure love means. And to second chances, which we don't always deserve but should always try to earn. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, I found my father sitting alone, watching the remaining guests dance. You okay, Dad? I'm thinking about all the things I missed. With you. All the moments I was too rigid or too distant or too focused on the wrong things to appreciate. He turned to look at me. I can't get those back, but I'm grateful I realized it before I missed everything with Tyler too. You're here now. That's what counts. I want you to know something, Daniel. The man you've become, the father you are, the integrity you've maintained despite how your mother and I failed you. That's all you. You did that yourself, and I'm proud of you. I should have said it years ago, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud of you. I'd waited my entire life to hear those words from my father. Now that they'd finally come, they felt both healing and heartbreaking. Acknowledgement of what had been missing and hope for what could still be. As Sarah and I drove home that night with Tyler asleep in the back seat, she reached over and squeezed my hand. Your family is different now, she said softly. Yeah, they are. Do you trust it? The change? I thought about it carefully. I trust that they're trying. I trust that they recognize what they did wrong. Whether that translates into permanent change, I guess we'll see. And if it doesn't, if they slip back into old patterns, then I'll have boundaries in place. Tyler will have seen that I stood up for him, that I didn't let people treat him as less than, even if those people are family. That's a lesson worth teaching, even if it costs costs us relationships. But deep down, I was hopeful, cautiously, carefully hopeful, because I'd seen real change in my parents, in Marcus, in our family dynamics. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't complete, but it was real. 6 months after Tyler's makeup birthday party, Sarah and I received news that would test whether my parents' transformation was genuine or superficial. She was pregnant. We were going to have another baby. When we told my parents, I watched their reaction carefully. Would they immediately start planning elaborate celebrations? Would they try to take over and make it about them? Instead, my mother simply hugged Sarah and said, "Congratulations. What can we do to support you?" Simple words, but they meant everything. This was about us, about our growing family, not about their grandchild as an accessory to their lives. Throughout Sarah's pregnancy, my parents showed up consistently. My mother drove Sarah to prenatal appointments when I had to work. My father helped me prepare the nursery, spending an entire weekend painting and assembling furniture. They asked permission before buying things, respected our decisions about parenting choices, and never once made comparisons to how they'd done things with Marcus and me. When our daughter Emma was born, they were at the hospital within hours, but they waited to be invited back to see her. They didn't overstay their welcome. They didn't try to dictate how we should handle anything. They just supported us. One evening, about a month after Emma's birth, I was at my parents' house with Tyler while Sarah rested at home with the baby. My father and I were sitting on the back porch while Tyler played in the yard. "I never thanked you," my father said suddenly. "For what? For not giving up on us. For setting boundaries instead of just cutting us off completely. For giving us the chance to change. I almost did cut you off. After Tyler's birthday, I was done. I know, and it would have been justified, but you didn't. You held firm on your boundaries, you made us face what we'd done, and you gave us the opportunity to become better people. That's a gift, Daniel, one I'll never take for granted." Looking back, I realized that Tyler's 5th birthday party, or rather my parents' absence from it, had been a turning point. It had forced all of us to confront truths we'd been avoiding. It had shattered the illusion of a perfect family and given us the opportunity to build something more honest in its place. Was it painful? Yes. Did it require vulnerability and difficult conversations and sustained effort? Absolutely. But it was worth it, because now, when Tyler asked about his grandparents, he did so with confidence that they'd show up. Now, when Emma grew old enough to know her grandparents, she'd know them as people who valued her unconditionally. Now, when I looked at my family, I saw relationships built on honesty instead of pretense, on genuine effort instead of empty promises. My parents would never be perfect. They still occasionally fell into old patterns of favoritism or status consciousness. But when they did, they caught themselves, apologized, and course-corrected. That was all anyone could really ask for. Not perfection, but conscious, sustained effort to do better. As for Marcus, he'd become not just my brother in name, but a real friend. Someone who checked in, who made time, who acknowledged his privilege and worked to be better. His relationship with Tyler deepened into genuine uncle-nephew affection, built on presence and attention rather than expensive gifts. The family we'd become wasn't the one I'd grown up in. It was better. 3 years after Tyler's 5th birthday party, I found myself standing in my parents' backyard again. But everything had changed. It was Tyler's 8th birthday, and this time the party was exactly where it should have been all along. My parents had arrived early to help set up, not to take over, but to genuinely assist. My father was helping me string lights while my mother played with Emma, now 2 years old, in the grass. Marcus and Vanessa were inside preparing food, and Vanessa was visibly pregnant with their first child, a boy they'd already decided to name after our grandfather. "Daddy, do you think Grandma and Grandpa will like my science project?" Tyler asked, adjusting his glasses nervously. He'd won 2nd place at his school science fair with a project about dinosaur fossils, and he'd insisted on setting up a display at his birthday party. "They're going to love it, buddy. Grandpa already asked me 3 times what time he should get here so he wouldn't miss seeing it." Tyler beamed. The anxiety he used to carry about whether his grandparents would show up had faded over the years, replaced by confidence in their presence. As guests began arriving, friends from school, neighbors, cousins, I watched my parents interact with Tyler. My mother sat patiently while he explained every detail of his science project, asking questions that showed she was actually listening. My father took photos with the same enthusiasm he used to reserve only for Marcus's achievements. At one point, Tyler pulled his grandmother aside to show her something privately. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw her kneel down, listened carefully, and then pulled Tyler into a tight hug. When she stood up, she had tears in her eyes. "Everything okay?" I asked her later. "Tyler just told me I'm his favorite grandmother," she said, her voice thick with emotion. And I realized that 3 years ago, I didn't deserve that title. But somehow, by God's grace, I've been given the chance to earn it. As the party continued, I noticed something that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. My parents had left early from another event, one hosted by my father's business associates, to be here for Tyler's birthday. When my father's phone rang with a call from a colleague, he glanced at the screen and sent it to voicemail without hesitation. "Not today," he said simply. "Today is about Tyler." Later, as we were cutting the cake, Marcus stood up to make a toast. "I want to say something," he began, and the yard quieted. 8 years ago, this little guy was born, and I was terrible uncle. I was too focused on my career, too busy with my own life to appreciate what a gift it is to have a nephew." He looked at Tyler. "But Tyler, you taught me something important. You taught me that showing up matters, that being present is more valuable than any present I could buy, and I'm grateful for that lesson." He turned to me. "And Daniel, you taught me an even harder harder lesson. You taught me that love without respect isn't really love. That family means nothing if it doesn't mean showing up when it matters. Thank you for not letting us get away with less than what Tyler deserved. After the guests had left and we were cleaning up, my father approached me carrying a box I hadn't seen before. I want to give you something, he said, opening it carefully. Inside were dozens of photographs, ones I'd never seen. Pictures of me as a child, as a teenager, at my graduation, at my wedding. I found these when your mother and I were going through old albums. I realized I'd been so busy trying to appear strong and distant that I never told you I was proud of you. But I am. These photos, they remind me of all the moments I was there physically but not emotionally present. I can't get those back, but I wanted you to have them, to know that even when I didn't show it, I saw you. I've always seen you. I took the box, overwhelmed. Dad, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. That evening, after everyone had gone home and we'd put Tyler and Emma to bed, Sarah and I sat on our back porch, the yard still decorated with birthday remnants. Do you remember 3 years ago? She asked. How devastated you were. How angry. I remember. I also remember thinking our family was broken beyond repair. It wasn't broken. It just needed to be rebuilt on a better foundation. She was right. The crisis of Tyler's 5th birthday party had demolished the false structure our family had been built on, the one constructed from favoritism and unspoken hierarchies and conditional love. What we'd built in its place wasn't perfect, but it was honest. It was real. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. A photo of Tyler's handmade birthday cards from 3 years ago. The ones that said, I love Grandma and I love Grandpa. She'd asked me for them months ago, and I'd finally given them to her. Her message read, I keep these on my nightstand. They remind me every morning why I need to show up, why I need to be better. Thank you for giving me the chance to be the grandmother these cards say I am. Over the following months, I watched my parents continue their transformation. When Emma had a small recital at her daycare, they were there in the front row. When Tyler had a bad day at school, my mother called to check on him. When Sarah and I needed a date night, they volunteered to babysit without being asked. But perhaps the most significant moment came when Marcus and Vanessa's son, Robert Jr., was born. I'd been nervous, wondering if the arrival of Marcus's child would shift my parents' focus, would resurrect old patterns of favoritism. Instead, my mother said something that showed how far she'd come. I have 3 grandchildren, she told a friend at the hospital. 3 incredible grandchildren who I'm blessed to know and love. Each one special, each one valued, each one a gift. Equal. Not compared, not ranked, equal. 6 months after Robert Jr.'s birth, our extended family gathered for Thanksgiving at my parents' house. It was the first major holiday where all of us, all 3 grandchildren, all the complex relationships and healed wounds, would be together in one place. I'd been anxious about it, worried that the stress of hosting would bring out old behaviors, but I'd underestimated how much my parents had changed. The day was chaotic in the best way. Tyler played with baby Robert while trying to teach him about dinosaurs. Emma toddled around, charming everyone. My mother moved between the kitchen and the living room, making sure everyone was happy but not trying to control everything. My father told embarrassing stories about Marcus and me as kids, treating our childhoods with equal fondness. At dinner, my father stood to say grace, but before he prayed, he said something unexpected. Before we give thanks, I want to acknowledge something. 3 years ago, I almost lost my family, not because of death or distance, but because of pride and stubbornness and a fundamental failure to understand what matters most. He looked at me, then at Marcus, then at our children. Daniel, you saved this family by refusing to accept less than what we all deserved. You held up a mirror and made us see ourselves clearly. And while that was painful, it was necessary. So thank you for your courage, your boundaries, and your willingness to give us a second chance. The room was silent. Then Marcus raised his glass. To Daniel, and to families that have the strength to change. Everyone echoed the toast, and as I looked around the table at faces that had once made me feel so inadequate, I felt something I'd never experienced before in this house. Complete belonging. That night, as Sarah and I drove home with our sleeping children in the back seat, I thought about the journey we'd been on. From that devastating moment 3 years ago, when my parents chose a dinner party over their grandson's birthday, to this Thanksgiving where family betrayal had been transformed into family healing. Do you have any regrets? Sarah asked quietly. About how you handled everything? I considered the question carefully. I regret that it took Tyler being hurt for me to finally stand up for myself. I wish I'd done it sooner, before he had to feel that rejection. But I don't regret the boundaries I set. I don't regret making them face what they'd done, because if I hadn't, none of this healing would have happened. And you believe it's real? The change? I do, because it's been sustained. Because when they've slipped up, they've acknowledged it and corrected course. Because I've seen them make different choices, over and over again, when it would have been easier to fall back into old patterns. A few weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my mother, handwritten on her personal stationery. Dear Daniel, it began. I've started writing this letter a dozen times over the past 3 years, never quite finding the right words, but I've realized there are no perfect words for what I need to say. I can only speak from my heart. I failed you as a mother. Not just once, not just with Tyler's birthday party, but throughout your entire life. I prioritized the wrong things. Appearances over authenticity, achievement over character, Marcus's flashy success over your steady integrity. And in doing so, I damaged you in ways I'm only now beginning to understand. I cannot undo the past. I cannot give you back the childhood where you felt truly valued. I cannot erase the pain pain of always being second choice. But I can promise you this, for however many years I have left, I will spend them trying to be the mother you deserved from the beginning. You showed me what real strength looks like. It's not in rigid authority or maintaining appearances. It's in vulnerability, in setting boundaries, in demanding to be treated with the respect you've always deserved. Tyler and Emma will grow up knowing their grandparents' love is unconditional and consistent. They won't have to wonder if they're good enough or important enough. That's your gift to them, Daniel. You broke the cycle. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to change. Thank you for being the man you are, not because of how I raised you, but despite it, with more love than I've ever properly expressed, Mom. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. It was everything I'd needed to hear, said with an honesty that would have been impossible 3 years ago. The following summer, on Tyler's 9th birthday, we had a small party at our house. My parents arrived early, as they always did now, bringing gifts they'd carefully selected based on Tyler's current interests. As I watched my father help Tyler set up a telescope they'd given him, teaching him about constellations with genuine patience, I marveled at how different this scene was from the one 3 years prior. Tyler looked up at me at one point, his face radiant with happiness. This is the best birthday ever, Dad. Even better than your dinosaur party when you were 5. He thought about it seriously. That one was good too, but this one is better because everyone who said they'd be here actually is here. That's the most important part, right? People showing up when they say they will. Out of the mouths of children comes the deepest wisdom. Tyler had articulated in one simple statement what had taken me decades to understand, that love is demonstrated through presence, through consistency, through showing up even when it's inconvenient. As the party wound down and guests began leaving, my mother pulled me aside. Daniel, I need to tell you something. Your father and I have been talking about our legacy, about what we want to leave behind, and we've realized that the greatest gift we can give our grandchildren isn't money or status or connections. It's the example of people who made terrible mistakes but had the courage to change. She squeezed my hand. You gave us that chance. You refused to let us hide behind excuses or comfort. You loved us enough to demand better from us. That's the truest form of love there is. Looking back now, I understand that Tyler's 5th birthday party, the one my parents missed, was the beginning of something profound. It was the moment I finally stopped accepting crumbs and demanded the full meal. It was the moment I chose my son's well-being over my parents' comfort. It was the moment I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries that force people to confront their behavior. The journey from that devastating birthday party to this moment hadn't been easy. It had required difficult conversations, sustained effort, and a willingness from everyone to change. But it had been worth it. Because now, when Tyler asks about his grandparents, his eyes light up with genuine affection. Because Emma is growing up knowing her grandparents as people who adore her unconditionally. Because Marcus and I have a real relationship, built on honesty and mutual respect. And because I finally have the parents I always needed, not because they were always that way, but because they chose to become that way. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I found Tyler in his room looking at photos from the party on Sarah's phone. Dad, he asked, do you remember my birthday when I was 5? When Grandma and Grandpa didn't come? My heart clenched. I do, buddy. Do you remember it? A little bit. I remember being sad. But you know what? I'm glad it happened. You are? Why? Because after that, Grandma and Grandpa started being the best grandparents ever. Like they learned something important. Sometimes people need to make mistakes before they can be better, right? I pulled him into a hug, amazed by his wisdom. That's exactly right, Tyler. Sometimes people do need to make mistakes to learn. And the important thing is that they did learn and they did become better. As I turned off his light and closed his door, I reflected on his words. He was right. That birthday party, painful as it had been, had catalyzed a transformation that might never have happened otherwise. It had forced everyone to confront uncomfortable truths and make difficult choices. And in the end, those choices had led us here, to a family that was honest, present, and built on a foundation of genuine love rather than obligation or appearance. The scars from that day 3 years ago hadn't completely faded, probably never would, but they'd become part of our family's story, a reminder of where we'd been and how far we'd come, a testament to the power of boundaries, the possibility of change, and the resilience of love when it's given the chance to transform into something real. As I sit here now, writing this down years later, I think about other families struggling with similar dynamics, families where favoritism creates wounds that span generations, families where appearance matters more than authenticity, families where love is conditional and hierarchy is unspoken but ever present. To those families, I would say this: change is possible, but it requires courage. The courage to set boundaries even when it feels uncomfortable, the courage to demand respect even from people you love, the courage to walk away if necessary, and the courage to return if things genuinely change. My family's story could have ended very differently. My parents could have refused to acknowledge their mistakes. The distance could have become permanent, but they chose differently. They chose growth over pride, honesty over appearance, love over ego, and that choice made all the difference. What happened after my family refused to come to my son's birthday party? Everything changed. Not overnight, not perfectly, but genuinely and lastingly. We went from a family built on unspoken hierarchies to one built on mutual respect, from conditional love to unconditional presence, from prioritizing the wrong things to finally understanding what truly matters. Tyler Tyler is 11 now, Emma is 4, and Marcus and Vanessa's son Robert is 2. My parents are active grandparents to all 3, showing up consistently, loving equally, and creating memories that will last generations. The family we've become isn't the one I grew up in. It's better, because it was built on the ashes of the old one, constructed with honesty and sustained with genuine effort. Every year on Tyler's birthday, my parents send him a card, and every year, without fail, they include a note that says simply, "We'll be there, we promise, and we mean it." And every year they keep that promise. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who took your love for granted? Have you experienced the pain of watching people choose others over you, or the courage it takes to demand better treatment? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else find the strength to stand up for themselves. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything.